You could keep nothing secret on this movie. And the design started getting out on the internet. And people were saying, oh, Michael Bay, you wrecked my childhood. Damn you, Michael Bay.
Like most Transformers fans, when I first saw the designs of the movie, I was like, what? They changed everything. It's completely different. What's going on here?
I think a lot of fans hated me for it at first. After I read some of the posts that said they wanted to protest out of my office, they actually picked the wrong office because I moved. They didn't know my real address. So, and then the few little talkbacks where they said they want to hunt me down and kill me, I had a couple of those, but...
In 2008, Michael Bay released his first Transformers film, which was the first time audiences had seen these characters on the big screen. However, unlike the cartoon and toys, Bay approached the look of the Transformers much differently than fans had come to expect, creating both cautious intrigue from those who were curious about the redesigns, but also anger from those who wished for the original G1 designs to be used on the big screen. Unfortunately, Michael Bay felt that the G1 designs would look stupid in live action, so for years, fans could only dream about how they'd look in our reality. Luckily, Travis Knight and Stephen Cable Jr. would answer their wish with the release of Bumblebee and Transformers Rise of the Beasts, which offer more accurate G1 designs of the characters, since we now have two live-action depictions of the Transformers designs. What exactly is the pros and cons behind both design approaches, as in order to embrace one aspect of these characters, another would have to be sacrificed.
You know, all the Transformers films have jaw-dropping visual effects, but this film, this is character work, this is acting. We needed to make sure that Bumblebee and all the Decepticons that he goes up against feel like real, living, breathing creatures. It's not just something that looks cool, it needs to have emotion behind it.
Travis Knight's Bumblebee and Stephen Cable Jr.'s Rise of the Beasts were a bit different from the Bay films, as instead of continuing to up the stakes and spectacle to an absurd degree, they instead took a step back in order to tell a simpler and more personal narrative. Gone were the bombastic action scenes, replaced by a more character-driven narrative, with action mostly taking a backseat. This embrace of a more simpler approach to the film didn't just extend to the story, but the character designs as well, as you can see in comparison to Michael Bay's complex and busy robot designs. Travis Knight went for something a bit more plain, as yet another way to lean more into the characters and heart of the story rather than the action scenes.
Bumblebee has a distinctive look that's been honed on the previous Transformers films, but with the design on this film, we wanted to make sure that we did something that felt more evocative of the 80s Transformers design, something that was more plainer, something that had more plates, like all the little gears and gizmos that didn't look like, you know, if Charlie were to put her hand on Bee's chest, that her hand would get ground up in a gear.
When they were developing the look of the Transformers in Bumblebee, they wanted to embrace their original looks from the Generation 1 cartoon and toy line, while Michael Bay felt that those designs were stupid and would look ridiculous in live action, opting to go for something more grounded and complex in approach to sell their believability to the general audience. Travis Knight and the production team, however, felt that the G1 looks did have potential to look good on the big screen. It just depended on how you approach them. They took the G1 designs, which mostly consisted of boxy shapes, and decided to tweak them a tiny amount. Just like Michael Bay, they felt that creating a literal translation of the cartoon looks into live action would not work and would look a bit ridiculous to the general audience. However, unlike Michael Bay, who opted for a top-down overhaul with a loose resemblance to their original designs, Knight and the production team went a different route. They took the Generation 1 looks and the silhouettes they created and redesigned them in a way that still had the same rough shape and look, but with a ton of realistic details added on to help them feel more grounded, but still faithful to the original looks. This approach of taking their cartoon designs and adding realistic details and more complex shapes is what allows the Transformers to have an almost uncanny resemblance to their cartoon appearance, while still believably appearing like they could exist in our world. Now, certain Transformers appear in all directors' versions of the IP, especially characters like Soundwave, Shockwave, and Starscream. And it's these characters that do a good job demonstrating just how different these characters look within the visions of the directors. Michael Bay's designs are much more mechanically complex. We can see the very inner workings of each Transformer, and just in general, they look more aggressive but also lack any kind of distinct or notable color scheme to help us tell them apart. There's also a very clear insect-like approach to their faces, especially the Decepticons, who appear to have mandibles of some kind, perhaps to emphasize the fact that these Transformers really are a type of alien species with their own evolutionary adaptations. This is different from Travis Knight's approach, which gives each Transformer a notable and recognizable appearance that helps us identify them at a glance. However, this stark contrast in their looks is not universal, as certain features of the Transformers designs are kept the same as the ones in the Michael Bay films, such as the faces of Bumblebee and Optimus Prime, who basically look identical to their Michael Bay counterparts, likely because they needed to keep continuity, so changing up their faces would not work. Which is what I'd like to say, but they already broke the rule with the other Transformers in the film, so this explanation by the production team doesn't really make any sense, especially when it comes to the design of Optimus Prime, who keeps his red boxy look on Cybertron. However, in Michael Bay's first Transformers film, it's established that Optimus Prime arrived on Earth in his silver proto-form, which is implied to be how all Transformers look on the planet. For Optimus Prime, he scans an American big rig with flames, explaining his color scheme. However, in Bumblebee, he takes on the appearance of a European truck instead, which, although is more accurate to the cartoon's look, breaks continuity with Bay's movies due to the vast difference with how the Transformers designs are handled within all directors' visions. The most major element that would be affected is of course the transformations. In Michael Bay's films, the transformations were a spectacle in of themselves. There's a sense of realistic flow with how the transformations are approached, as you can realistically see every piece of the Transformer move, bend, and fold into place. This is why in the early films, the production team had a tendency to zoom in on the Transformer with a dramatic panning shot, as they really wanted audiences to see all the work that was put into each transformation. Couple this with the amazing sound design, and you can see how the transformations remain one of the best parts of the Michael Bay films. Travis Knight and Stephen Cable Jr. maintain the aesthetic of the transformations, which is to say, they don't use the simplistic and easy to follow transformations, and instead embrace the folding and twisting metal approach that Michael Bay created. However, clearly in Travis Knight and Stephen Cable Jr.'s films, the transformations are so much more simple and much quicker than what we see in the Bay movies. The transformations in the newer films are quicker, less visually appealing, and there's a tendency for the transformations to sort of just pop or morph into their forms. There's no sense of anticipation and follow through, which makes them look a bit underwhelming. There's less of an emphasis on making the transformations look believable, and you tend to see the creative team hide the transformations through obscuring them using the environment, going off camera, transforming so fast that you can't possibly see what happened, or using quick and close-up camera shots to hide most of the transformation. But we can't give Michael Bay a pass, as the later Transformers films were much less ambitious and lazy in terms of the complexity and effort put into the transformations.